Can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Let me make sure we're popping through. So I will start with a welcome before we get to our opening blessing. So hello and welcome to our, I have to do the math, 6th or 7th Riparian Workshop, hosted by Paula and my friends at the University of California Cooperative Extension. And this year, the Climate Science Alliance was nice enough to pop in. We'll talk about them in a minute. But we'll be recording, like I mentioned. And it should be a fun day. We've got the morning and afternoon sessions. And for everybody who's on here, if you have to pop in and out, no big deal. You're allowed to come to just one session or all sessions. This isn't me taking notes and recording this for a class or anything. So enjoy, have fun. When we get to the question and answer session, we'll kind of go over it there. But drop questions in the chat as we go, or feel free to raise your hand, whenever the speakers aren't speaking, and it should be a good day. It's virtual, but I am with Paula Band and Mission Indians. So this is coming to you live from the Paula tribe this morning. If everybody wants to drop in who they are, where they're from, and what they're looking for out of this talk in the chat, we'll go over that. But rather than do every single introduction, but it'd be nice to see who you are, where you're from. I'm sure most people are Southern California, San Diego area, but this went out all over the place. So there could be some people from all over the world enjoying our oak talk today. And yeah, like I said, question and answer just throughout the day, drop them in there. And I think the next thing, the easiest thing to do is if Eric, if you're on there, if you want to do an opening little thank you, opening little blessing for Paula, that'd be great.
Sure. Again, thank you everybody for coming together. I like the idea of that, what you guys are doing, and thanks Kurt for providing this for me. It's an honor to be here. There is a prayer that was taught to us when we were really young, and I'd like to share that with everybody right now. It's in our language, the Capeno language called Patanahill. Jamna, Tukachio Kike Hilka, Atoa Chimyak Naganaka, Honey Quepa Chamval Chichain, Honey Quesh Gehesh Mivi Awaina to Moel Matukachia, Chimimaa should be to Mitchin Choi, Kayap and Changa Wanash. Eladiche maybe Jimmy Chow and I much per kitchen when I Jim Kaitan from you Kaichim Trumpetulpi. Eladiche me my wish to me, Pemakichi Penang Bicha. And that prayer actually was shared with us, and what it does, it asks Great Father to thank us all for coming together, and it also asks that even though we all make mistakes in our lives, to ask that we forgive our mistakes and understand that we're coming together with good hearts to provide good things. And that's my blessing for this morning. Amen. And again, thank you very much, Kurt. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, I can see your mouth moving, but I don't hear you.
Oh, must have got hit. Apologize. Thank you again. Thank you to Eric Ortega. Check him out on the local tribal Paula radio station if you're driving through. He's on there sometimes, and he's a great guy locally, working hard for the tribe. And I think it's important that we remember our indigenous people, especially today. The point of this is to help the trees and the people of California, kind of improve some of the issues we're seeing causing our tree loss, not just from people, but from disease and, from the lack of traditional knowledge and all of that. So it should be a fun couple of days. Hope everybody enjoys it. And then, as I mentioned, I'm from the Paula Band and Mission Indians. I'm not a tribal member, but I've worked here almost coming up on 9 years, actually. Been working hard in the environmental office. I'm a wildlife biologist by trade, and I couldn't do this alone. Every year I've had a little bit of help from Chris Mcdonald. So I'll have everybody introduce themselves, but this year it's the University of California Cooperative Extension, UCCE, has helped me out a lot. And then the Climate Science Alliance, which is a great organization. We've worked on a ton of stuff, including, if you can see in my little picture back here, we've got the Climate Kids traveling trunks to do some education with the kids. So I'll start with Chris Mcdonald. If you want to introduce yourself from UCCE, say hello to everybody.
Everyone, Chris McDonald, a Natural Resources Advisor with University of California Cooperative Extension. Kurt and I have been partnering on this since the beginning, and it's always fun to watch the evolution of this workshop. I do research and extension across Southern California. I help people grow native plants and kill weeds, and I've been doing a lot of work with tribes and especially around oaks, so I'm really excited about this workshop. And my partner in crime is Carolyn Martis. Carolyn, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Some of you know me. I'm Carolyn Martis, and I'm working with the Cooperative Extension. I'm working for Chris on a couple of different projects and trying to help Kurt put together today and tomorrow's workshop. So you'll be, I'm going to moderate a couple of the sessions and try to get everybody through and learn some good things. Back to you, Kurt.
Yeah, Chris has been, instrumental in getting this off the ground from the first one. And like I said, I think we're at 6, 7. I don't know. It's been a while. We've been doing a lot of these. And Carolyn's been great. She's been backup. She's helping me get all those links out to you so you can register and surveys and things. And then this year, I've suckered in the Climate Science Alliance, who do too much work as it is to assist me. So Anna, are you still there? Oh, Anna might have popped off. I don't know. She said she had to leave early, but Connor Mcgee, I think he's floating around there, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, do you want to introduce yourself, Connor, and talk a little bit about the Alliance?
Yes, Miuya. My name's Connor Mcgee. I'm from the Paula Band of Mission Indians, and I work as a research and data applications manager at the Climate Science Alliance. At the Alliance, what we really do is we're a nonprofit organization, sort of a cluster of scientists that work with community members across the board. A lot of my focus is with tribal work, but help to bring capacity and help community members find their vision for resilience amidst climate change. And that could involve, just pulling together the most recent relevant science that's available, and also create science, which we're doing in some of our projects with various institutions to do research. Yeah, really happy to be here today. A lot of the conversations, of course, through having resilient communities in our region involves the persistence of oaks and addressing problems of climate change, as well as pests, etc. A lot of what we'll be covering this next 2 days here. So yeah, please, I'll share my email in the chat if there's any questions or anything that I could share with you throughout the next 2 days. Please feel free to contact me.
Thank you. Yeah, the Climate Science Alliance are really the superstars for some of the climate change issues going on here. Let's see if I can. Aha. So that brings us to kind of the housekeeping community agreement. I won't read everything on here. I'll let you guys look it over. But essentially, if you are in this workshop, if you're going to ask questions, you're going to chat, be respectful, understand that different ways of thinking are not wrong. They're all equally valid around here as long as we're respectful. We're talking about traditional knowledge through this. We're going to talk about Western science. We're going to talk about numerous ways of knowing and understanding the world around us and how to get the best possible work done for the people and plants of California. So, be respectful and know that this is, pre-colonization. This is indigenous land. So, their kind of respect comes first. And then people like me who are not indigenous, who are working out here, are trying our best to combine that Western knowledge with the traditional knowledge and fix the problems we've all caused. So be respectful, care about the people, ask things politely. It's okay to ask questions, but just do it in the nice way. Which brings us to our agenda. This is kind of our welcoming portion. In a couple of seconds here, we'll be to our Threats to Oak session. We'll do a lunch break, come back. The same Zoom link will be the entire day. And the Zoom link will bring you back to tribal knowledge session this afternoon, which should be a great talk. That's probably one you don't want to miss if you have to hop out for any of the other ones. Day 2, we've got climate change, and then trying to end on a positive note. We're talking about downer in the morning, positive stuff in the afternoon, both days, and then end on our oak restoration techniques. So we can all go out in the world and plant 1 million oaks and make California beautiful and stop those wildfires we don't want, and hopefully or at very least, protect a couple oaks in the backyard. Which brings us to our threats to oaks. So I'm gonna pop off my sharing and pass it over to Carolyn. Oh, we've got 3 great speakers this morning.
Yes, we do. We're going to start off with Dr. Stacy Hashunama. She's with the she's a forest entomologist with the U.S. Forest Service. So Stacy, you are up first, and then it's going to be Dr. Charlie Barnes and then Jan Gonzalez, just so everyone has an idea. So Stacy, or Kurt, can you go ahead and share your screen with Stacy?
Yes, I just got to find her name on here.
She's on there. You can just search her participants. Or do you want to just do Charlie first?
I'm muting myself. You just want to start with Charlie, and I'll get her.
Yeah, let's just go with Charlie first.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good, Charlie.
Okay. So good morning. Thank you, Eric, for your kind words. They're very inspirational. And I will talk today and try not to be too down about some of these diseases, because there are always pluses and minuses to some of these things. But I'll talk today about the diseases, some common diseases on oak. And my name is Charlie, plant pathologist with the Forest Service out of San Bernardino. Why is it not going to the next slide? Can you see the next slide?
No.
No. It says we're still on the first slide.
Why is it not going?
Well, why don't you try
Can you see it now?
no. Why don't you stop share and reshare?
Can you see my white rot and brown rot picture? I can see
Yeah.
it.
I cannot see it. Oh, there we go. You're on now.
Oh boy, is it going to be this slow? So I'm going to start today talking about some very basic things about fungi and how they decompose wood. There are 2 basic kinds. There's a white rot. These fungi will eat and consume lignin and leave the white cellulose. The other groups of fungi, these are the brown rots. These can then degrade and utilize the cellulose, but leave the brown lignin behind. That often helps in looking at some of these things. The brown rots and white rots with pine and conifers about 50-50. With, oh boy, this is really slow.
And that's fine, Charlie. You can, while it's loading up, you can, we're all listening. You're doing great.
What's the brown rot again?
So these are fungi and they're the old fungi. These are the oldest known groups of fungi, and they break down cellulose and hemicellulose.
Oh, so
What they cannot use.
And the white
And the
ones?
white fungi, the white rot fungi can consume lignin. Yes.
Ah, got it. Thanks.
So what you see with the white rot is the cellulose, which is white. And this is just not moving.
I saw like arrows in the bottom left corner of the screen. Maybe you have to like manually click the arrows to go to the next slides. On the left side under white rot, I don't know. It came up when you were on the first slide. I don't see
I
them.
don't know how to do it. Way down there. Okay, I think I see them. Okay, do you see the next slide?
No. Oh, yep, you're
yeah,
good.
yeah, I
You
can.
have it now.
Oh, it's that slow. So basically, these are a few fungi that I'll talk about today. There are 5 million types of fungi that exist, and these are some of the few and the common diseases we see in oak. I'll talk about the Ganoderma species. They're really nice looking fungi, fun to talk about, fun to see. These are white rots, that's the WR. The hedgehog fungus, this is an edible fungus. It has a very interesting fruiting body and type of rot. The Hypoxian Tankers, these are very common, often associated with other diseases, but they're easy to see, easy to spot. Formictiporia is another white rot that's very interesting in that it was named officially in 2016, and the official sample is on the Cleveland. The honey fungus and the sulfur fungus are the two most common and important pathogens on oaks in Southern California. Did it change?
Yeah, it did.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll talk about a couple of leaf diseases as well. We'll talk about Anthracnose, Powdery Mildew, and a little bit of Phytophthora, because it's hard to talk about diseases in oak and look it up on the internet without seeing articles about sudden oak death. Okay, some Ganodermas. These are white rots of hardwoods and conifers. If you see a shiny Ganoderma on an oak, it is Ganoderma Polychromos. And here's a picture of one on the left that's on coast live oak. If you see one on conifers, shiny, looks very similar, it is Ganoderma oregonense. There are other Ganodermas in Southern California, and these are brought in when they bring in other trees. So Ganoderma sessile, you find on things like the liquid amber and sweet gum. That's an eastern tree and an eastern Ganoderma. So the trees and the fungi often, like the insects, come together. So there are invasives that you do see here. But anything on oak will be polychromos. Then you have Ganodermas that are non-lactate. And in California, those are all called Ganoderma browni. Here's a sample that I collected in the Angeles on coast live oak. If you can't see it, I circled it in red. That's what it looks like. They're often blend in very well, but it's a non-shiny or non-lactate Ganoderma. So putting them together, the upper left, you see the non-shiny, that would be a Ganoderma browni. The shiny lactate, those are Ganoderma polychromos. One other thing about Ganoderma that you see in the upper right is you can draw on them. The common name of these is often called artist conch. So you can write your name, you can draw on them and keep them. And here's a brown rot. Here's what Ganoderma looks like. It's a white rot. It can destroy the root system of the oak tree. And in this case, the oak tree was so weak without the root system, the tree fell over. The next one I'll talk about is the hedgehog. This is a very interesting fungus. It has a real pretty fruiting body. Sometimes it's also called lion's mane. It is edible, but you have to get there before the other insects and other things eat it, because they like it as well. The type of rot is called the white pocket rot. So if you see this in a downed oak, then you know that it's the hedgehog fungus. Very unique to this one. The next one I'll talk about are Hypoxian Tankers, and this will come up again at the end of my talk. It is a white rot, and it's these little brown or black looking globs on the sides of trees. These are associated with any type of wounding on a tree. And you can see it. I had a sample that was sent to me by Mark Hayes at the University of California in Santa Barbara in November of last year, and he was wanting to know what it was, and this is what they look like normally. Now the Formictiporia, Physorata. This is a unique story. It's not a new fungus, but the fungus that has been here is always given a European name because it looks like things in Europe. But in 2016, there are folks from Europe, Josef Vlasic and his son, came here and did some DNA sequencing on the fungi that are here and found it to be an actually unique species. So they gave it a new name that is consistent with what's here. The official sample, so this is the holotype, the one that's in the museum, the one that everything is compared to, was collected on Mount Laguna. And this is what it looks like. You can see the kind of tannish layer is the pore layer. This is where all the spores are going to come from. There's a little part on top that you see has got, kind of looks like bark. And this is a sample that I collected not too long ago in Green Valley on the Angeles National Forest. And you can see the big pore layers coming out on the side. It does cause a white rot, and it caused the death of this oak tree. So for some important, the two main fungi that cause problems on oak, there's an Armillaria species, and these are white rots. There's actually two of them. I'll talk about it in a minute. The Armillaria, the common name is honey fungus or honey mushroom, and it's because of the color, not because of the taste. Note that they do sort of all come together in like a bunch, that the stems are coming out from one spot underneath. As I mentioned before, they are edible, but you need to get them early. So if they've been out in the sun a while, they turn black. And this is what they look like. This is on Mount Laguna. About a year and a half ago that I found these fruiting bodies. You can see they kind of look like they're all coming out of a clump. But this is what it will look like when you haven't collected when it's fresh. One neat thing about armillarias, or interesting things, is that there are two species. So there's Malea gallica. They do go to conifers and hardwoods, but they move in a kind of a unique way. So most fungi are moving around by spores, and kind of when they move within a tree, they're going by mycelium within a tree. But moving tree to tree, most fungi move by spores. These fungi actually move underground. So these are rhizomorphs. Rhizo meaning root, and morph meaning form. So it's like a root kind of root looking thing. And those are the black shoelace looking things on the roots of this canyon live oak that was in the San Bernardino. So what these fungi do is they grow along the root system underground from oak to oak to oak, and can cause centers, areas of root diseases and death of oaks. A fun thing is that if you find some of this fresh in the mycelium, in the daylight they look white, but if you were to look at this at night, these things are bioluminescent and they glow in the dark. The last major disease I'll talk about is the sulfur fungus. So this is the other major disease. Letiporius is its genus. It is a brown rot. This is unique from what I've been talking about so far, and it does go on to conifers and hardwoods. But so far, I've only seen it in oak in Southern California. So these sulfur shell fungi are the most important brown rot fungus on oaks in California, and is a major cause of tree failure and tree mortality. And this is from Ted Swirsky and his wife, Elizabeth Bernhardt, in their book, in Field Guide to Insects and Diseases of California Oaks. So it's a very important disease. It is often called sulfur shelf or chicken of the woods, not because it tastes like chicken, but if you do cook it, and it is edible, it has a texture of chicken. As I said before, it does go on conifers and hardwoods, and so far I've only seen it on oak. And a couple examples here. Again, when they get old, this is right near Mount Laguna on the Cleveland National Forest. If you look to the bottom right of this dead black oak, you'll see that white glob on the bottom. These are layers of the fungus. So this fungi, when they're out in the sun, bleach white. Here's one on the Cleveland. I took this picture just about a week ago, it'll be a week ago tomorrow, and it has killed this black oak. There's maybe a dozen greenish leaves that you can see on the upper right-hand corner, but the oak is on its way out and most of it has fallen off. And what you'd see if you were to open up that oak or push it over is these kind of brown rot, what they sometimes call cubicle rot. So it looks like little cubes, brown cubes that you see. Okay, a few leaf diseases. One of them is what they call Anthracnose. This is a lot of different species. You really need a DNA sequence or to grow them in the lab to see exactly what they are. So these common leaf spots, because they're difficult to really ID down to species, they're grouped as called Anthracnose. And that's a lot of these kind of spots and things that you see on leaves. Another interesting thing that you see on leaves are these powdery mildews. And again, there are a lot of species. There's Erysippes and some other genera, but they all look powdery. So if you see the tops of leaves, this is what they look like. It looks like the little powder on the side, but the interesting fact of these is that unlike most fungi that are growing inside the leaf, these are growing on the surface. So you can see the mycelia, and that's why they look powdery. Okay, a couple words about Phytophthora. There's a lot of Phytophthora. The main one that you see talked about in California is sudden oak death. You see that mostly on coast live oak and a lot of it on tan oak. This is where sudden oak death is in California. It's north of San Luis Obispo, kind of central California surrounding the San Francisco Bay Area and south of Santa Cruz. So we do not see it down here. People have been looking, but haven't found it yet. What it does is it shows us kind of bleeding. This is from the Oak Conservation Group, University of California, that you see these kind of bleeding on the side of the tree, of the bowl. And a lot of Phytophthora do that. They're often associated with Ambrosian bark beetles after that. And then the Hypoxian Tankers comes. But remember that that comes to any dead and dying tissue that's in the oak. So these are sometimes misinterpreted that when you do see Hypoxian Tankers that you have sudden oak death. And that's not necessarily the case because they are often associated, but Hypoxian Tankers goes to any dead part of the oak. So looking down here in Southern California, there's a group out of UC Davis that has been looking in the Angeles, an area just north of Santa Clarita. And so far on the coast live oak, they have found 11 different species of Phytophthora. At least one is going to be a new species, number 11 at the bottom. And with that, I will stop and pass it on.
Before we go and pass it on, Charlie, one question that came up is, of all the different species you talked about, which ones are native and which ones are not native? I don't know if you can answer that all right now.
Yeah, no, they're all native.
They're all native.
They're
okay.
all native. Yep.
So we're gonna.
I could say, so if the sudden oak death, Phytophthora morum, that is not native.
Okay.
But that is not down in Southern California.
Okay.
Yet.
All right.
Okay.
And we'll have time for all the speakers and we'll have a question and answer at the end. Right now, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Stacy Hishunima, who is also with the U.S. Forest Service. And I believe she's a forest entomologist. So go ahead, Stacy.
Thanks, Carolyn. Can you guys hear me all right? Or should I switch to the phone line?
I can hear you.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I guess here I am, part of the doom and gloom team, always. So today I'm going to be talking to you about 3 invasive insects that are threatening oaks down in Southern California, 2 of which, oops, hold on, how do I advance my slides? Oh, there we go. Okay, 2 of which you may have already heard about, gold-spotted oak borer and the invasive shot-hole borers. Those 2 we already have here in Southern California. And then one you may not have heard about, the Mediterranean oak borer, which is not yet in Southern California. It's in Northern California right now, but it's something to keep an eye out for. So gold-spotted oak borer, all of the information that you guys need can be found on gsob.org. And there's a forest insect and disease leaflet that has a complete summary of all the information I'm going to go over. And for a lot of you, because I see and recognize your names, this is going to be kind of a refresher, and it's just going to kind of go quickly. But the gold-spotted oak borer is a beetle that's native to southeastern Arizona originally, but it was introduced into California likely in the late 1990s. And it was brought into California in infested firewood. And as a result of trees dying here in California, people have been taking advantage of that, of course, because oak firewood is so valuable, and moving that firewood throughout Southern California and increasing the pace and scale of the infestation here in Southern California. So this beetle is responsible for tens of thousands of trees, oak trees dying especially in San Diego County. And this zone of infestation map is just to show you what big leaps the beetle is making because of the movement of infested firewood. So originally it was introduced into the Descanso Ranger District down on the Cleveland National Forest, kind of the southernmost part of the Cleveland National Forest, and then has spread naturally throughout San Diego County, but has made these really big jumps all the way up to the Angeles National Forest in a community called Green Valley. And it's just been moving around ever since. And that's because the beetle is so cryptic. It can live inside of infested wood that seems long dead, but it can harbor these insects, and these insects are developing for like 2 years after the tree has been cut. Like a lot of the invasives, the story is that in its native range, it's not really a pest, but when it comes into this new area with hosts that have never encountered these beetles before, the behavior is completely different. So in its native range, very low tree death, very low infestation, versus here in San Diego County, high mortality, high infestation. And in California, it prefers red oaks, specifically California black oak and coast live oak. And it will occasionally infest Engelmann oak, but never kill them. And then it will kill and infest canyon live oak. And these beetles really prefer large trees. So a 20-inch diameter at breast height tree is about the size that you can put your arms around comfortably. And they will go into smaller hosts, but they prefer these really large trees. And the hosts don't need to be stressed in order for the beetles to be attracted to them. But healthy hosts likely live longer and are able to survive damage by the beetles, because the way that the beetles are actually killing the trees is that the larvae of the beetles are completing their development inside of the bark of these oak trees, and their galleries or their feeding tunnels are actually damaging the tree. And so a big oak that has 5 beetle larvae that are winding their way up and down the bark are not going to cause that much damage. But when several years of repeated infestation or hundreds of beetles are infesting a tree, then the tree is really girdled. And when there's a combination of different stressors, so disease or drought stress, then the trees are more likely to succumb to less damage by the beetles than in times when the trees are not stressed. And the greatest density of the attacks are going to occur along the trunk of the tree, unfortunately for the tree. And when the beetles are developing inside of the tree, they're protected and we can't see them. We don't know how many beetles are inside of the tree. So our best indication of whether or not the beetles are there is after they've already left the tree. And when they leave the tree, they leave a characteristic exit hole that is shaped like a capital D. So one flat edge and one rounded edge. And that's because the backs of these beetles are flat and then their bellies are rounded. And they carve out just enough for their body to fit through. So if you're looking at the trunk of an oak tree in Southern California and you see this D-shaped hole, like really straight lines, then gold-spotted oak borer is the beetle that caused that hole. So the gist of this is that it's very easy to spread gold-spotted oak borer. Even in an infested area, you don't want to be moving firewood that might be infested from one part of your property to another, and especially not to move it long distances. If you're in an area that is known to be infested, then you can assume that the beetles are there because you don't really know how many beetles are developing inside that wood until they actually emerge. And so the best, because we don't have much time today, the best resource for you is on gsob.org, and you can look at the GSOB story map, and it'll help walk you through things like how to handle your infested bark and intact wood. And it'll ask you a series of questions like, do you live within 6 miles of a known infestation? What kind of tree do you have? And so on and so forth. So it will walk you through your management options. And ongoing research right now is kind of, because the beetle is so well established and we already know that it has preferred hosts. And a lot of these preferred hosts are the dominant species in a lot of the areas here in Southern California. We're trying to see if there is a difference in GSOB preference for hybrids of preferred hosts like coast live oak and California black oak when they're mixed with a non-preferred host like interior live oak. We're also looking into one biological insecticide and then stump sprouting. So meaning cutting trees while they're healthy enough to still stump sprout. And so basically keeping that exact same tree on the landscape, even though, you know, the main stem is dead. So in summary, gold-spotted oak borer infests oaks in Southern California, has the potential to spread throughout California. You're looking for those D-shaped exit holes on large California black oak and coast live oak. Don't move oak firewood. And then all these management options can be found on gsob.org. Moving on to the invasive shuttle borers. These were first detected in 2003 in traps in Los Angeles County, but not identified as a problem until 2012. That's the lag time between introduction of an invasive pest and establishment and detection as a pest. And we know that there are at least 7 different species in this species complex. They all look exactly the same, but they are different species. And we have 2 of those species here in Southern California. The 2 that we have are Polyphicus shothole borer and Kuroshio shothole borer. And they have roughly, they are overlapping in range, but in San Diego County, it's mostly Kuroshio shothole borer. And these beetles are called ambrosia beetles because they're reliant on symbiotic fungi for their nutrition. So they only feed on these symbiotic fungi and they actually farm them. And they have specialized pits basically near their mouth parts that the spores are kind of pushed into as they're feeding. And then when they go to a new host, then they cultivate the fungi. The fact that they only eat these fungi allows them to have a very, very wide host range. Most ambrosia beetles are attacking stressed or dying trees. Those are the native ambrosia beetles. But these actually attack healthy plants. They attack over 200 different species of hosts here in Southern California. The beetles are going right into the wood, and many beetles usually attack the same plant at the same time, causing further damage. And then the symbiotic fungi that they're associated with can also cause disease. And as a result, the combined damage from the fungi and the beetles cause the branches to die and tree to die. And then the stems and branches are also going to fail because they're structurally degrading the stems and branches. This is an example of, they just like small and large diameter hosts. And the reason why I'm talking about them and why they're so significant to us, in a riparian context, is because these beetles love hardwoods, and they especially love some of the hardwoods that are native to California. So the hosts that are asterisked, those are hardwood species that are native to California. And in blue, I put species that are commonly found inside of riparian areas. On the left-hand side, there are 15 species that are susceptible, highly susceptible to death because of the combination of damage from the beetle and the fungi. That includes box elder, California sycamore, black cottonwood, valley oak, black willow, red willow, arroyo willow, so a lot of the willows. And then it will also infest, but not kill commonly, white alder, coast live oak, canyon live oak, Engelmann oak. So that really begs the question, what will our riparian habitats look like? And we got kind of a little snippet of information on how it'll interact in the worst case scenario in a riparian area, which is the Tijuana River Valley, which some of you may recognize. It was a native riparian species habitat, mainly willows and cottonwoods. And basically within the course of a year, the Kuroshio shuttle borer took out all of the willows and cottonwoods, and basically we were left just with invasive species. This is worst case scenario because we think that this is kind of a case where there was a lot of trees that were, even though they were native species, they did not grow in that area. It was kind of an unnatural setting. There was a lot of pollution. And actually, thankfully, now that we've seen, we've had a chance to follow this infestation, a lot of those willows actually resprouted, and those resprouts are not being as heavily infested as the original trunks were. So there is some hope for areas that are even devastated to this extent, even though we don't expect this to happen in a lot of our native riparian areas. Identification is much more difficult. For each of the hosts that it infests, the symptoms and signs of infestation are going to look a little bit different. There could be staining, frass is, or boring dust is like kind of sawdust-like sawdust-like material that comes out when the beetles chew up their material and push it out of their holes. And there could be gumming and sugary exudate, but the thing that I would look for is holes that look like the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen that are completely circular. And then if you were to carve away some of the bark, it would continue into the wood. And then the boring dust, or that the stuff that I was just talking about, is going to look light in color, kind of the color of sawdust. So in summary, identification is difficult, but look for the preferred hosts, and those preferred hosts can be found on pshb.org. You want to look for a combination of the holes that are the size of a tip of a ballpoint pen, usually associated with some kind of staining, and then you're going to look for many dead or dying hardwoods in a riparian area with a lot of the boring dust, and especially if more than one species of host of these like preferred hosts are attacked, then you know it's probably Polyphagous shuttle borer. And you can also see a distribution map that's up to date on pshb.org. And then finally, so I have, I think, a couple more minutes, right, Carolyn? Okay, Mediterranean oak borer is Xyloborus monographus. It was a beetle that was discovered in 2019 on valley oaks in Napa County. This is also an ambrosia beetle. It's native to the Mediterranean region, and it's a minor pest in Europe. But here in California, it is a true pest. It is attacking valley and blue oaks. And usually these attacks seem to be prolonged attacks, and they start in the crown of the tree or the top of the tree. And they prefer stressed trees. And as the tree becomes more stressed and they are infesting the upper branches, they move down to the lower branches and then continue until the tree dies. The confusing thing about this beetle is that you have to look at the galleries in order to do the diagnosis, because the holes are going to look pretty much similar to the invasive shuttle borer holes. They look like the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen, maybe a little bit smaller. But the galleries or the feeding tunnels of these beetles are going to be the diagnostic characteristics. So as branches break off of the top of an oak tree, and you can kind of crack the wood apart, you would see galleries that are trellis-like and very crowded and intersecting, so that all of the lines are going to intersect kind of like a tree, but they're going to fan out in a single plane. So if you were to make cross sections of this branch, you would see that they're all within one plane. So you would be able to see it in this plane, but not in this plane. And you would also see some boring dust in that it's going to be light in color and then oozing sap sometimes. There's a lookalike that we have down here that are two different species of Monarthrium that are native to Southern California. And those galleries would branch out like a palm leaf and don't intersect. So the kind of like this, like fingers that don't intersect. And these beetles typically only attack branches and trees that are dead, dying, or diseased. So you're going to see this pretty commonly. I think most of the coast live oak that I've seen have had some evidence of either Monarthrium or Western oak bark beetle, which has similar hole sizes inside of on the outside of the bark. So the symptoms are going to be those holes and then a lot of sawdust. But if you suspect it in an area, and especially maybe on, all of the host oaks down here would basically be new hosts. So we have no idea how exactly they're going to affect the oaks that are down here. But you would look for attacks that start in the branches first, and you would look at the down branches. And if you think you see those characteristic galleries inside of those branches, then contact, you can report it on mobpc.org, or you can contact me, or if you aren't the environmental staff, then contact your environmental staff. And that's it. mobpc.org, pshb.org, gsob.org. Those are your resources for a lot of this information.
Thank you, Stacy. And please stay on. We're going to have Jan, and then we're going to bring all three speakers back, and we'll have some time for some Q&A with the audience. So please stick around. And Kurt's going to go ahead and turn it over to Jan Gonzalez, who's a project coordinator for the University of California Cooperative Extension. Go ahead, Jan.
Hello. Can everybody see my screen and hear me?
Yes.
I can't see you now that I'm sharing my screen.
We see your avatar and we see your screen.
Okay, I was trying to get it back on off of avatar, but I can't see how to do that right now. Okay.
Your voice is lovely.
All righty. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here. I appreciate, like I said, the invitation and the opportunity to share. I was asked to share a little bit about community engagement, and specifically with the gold-spotted oak borer program. But I think kind of the thinking process that I go through is the same for any of the programs that I'm working on. So essentially, I'm a program coordinator with the UC Cooperative Extension, and I assist with the design, development, implementation, extension, and management to some degree of a variety of different education and outreach programs for different topics. One of them has been gold-spotted oak borer, and so I'm just going to share, kind of like I said, some of the thought processes that I have when I am preparing to when there's messaging or information or conversations I want to have with a new community. So just for understanding kind of where I'm coming from when we talk about community engagement, it's this process of involving the community in conversations about decisions that are going to affect them or interest them. And the two words I really like about this definition is conversations and them. So it's about them, and it's about the community and those within the community. And conversations means it's two-way direction in my mind. So I really feel strongly that it's more about just coming in and providing information or participating and being engaged and providing input, but it's about building connections, and that's been the aspect of all of the program development projects that I've been involved with that I've really, really enjoyed is building these connections. So I kind of think of the process as define, discover, investigate, and then repeat. So this can be done on several phases, if you will, or on several levels. So certainly there's the issue. What is it, at least define at a top level or general level, what is the issue? What is it that is threatening the community, or what's at risk? Or where, are you looking for a solution, or are you wanting to just inform about a new program that's going to assist them? Or are you looking for permissions to come on private property and monitor for gold spotted oak borer, or assess oak trees throughout the community? You also want to kind of define what the community is. Is it based on geographic location? Is it based on maybe organizational? Is the community, or perhaps an industry sector? Or maybe it's a demographic, so like age, youth and children versus adults. There's different things to consider, once you define what the community is. Who are different potential partners? Are these just general stakeholders within the community, around the community, public or private, so public agencies that are land managers in the area, or again, is it private property owners, residents, private businesses? And what are the opportunities? So it's opportunities. So I guess what I really want to point out with this screen, it's not just as much, these aren't in order. And I think that they kind of cycle and repeat themselves in these different phases or steps. So for instance, you may look for opportunities to maybe discover some new potential or possible partners in having these conversations, or helping you to identify what the communities are, or helping you to further define what the actual issue is, what you're wanting to talk about with your community. You may attend a webinar or a conference such as this and learn about a new existing organization that's already a joint stakeholder group. That would be a great way to connect with a bunch of potential partners. Once you are meeting with those, or you've identified some partners, they may help you, like I said, further identify the community. Once you start meeting with the community, they may further define the issue for you, maybe at a level that you didn't even realize was an issue. And they may share with you different opportunities where you can have further conversations within their community, or they may let you know of other potential partners within the local community. So I think it just kind of cycles and circles, and as long as we're open and we're asking questions and we're listening, actively listening, then the partners and opportunities just don't stop. So for an example, you really want to define the issue, and I'm just going to run through this quickly. What I think about, are you wanting to have a conversation about gold spotted oak borer and how it's causing oak tree mortality, and that may impact their surrounding forest or open space environment and the habitat, which may then impact the amount of recreationists that are going to be coming into the community? Or is it about the risks that these dead and dying oaks, which are caused by gold spotted oak borer, the risks that are to the different residents that are living within a community, such as falling on a vehicle in front of your residence, or the picture on the right there is it's actually tree removal that's near power lines. So just trying to share what these risks are. Or is it informing them that there's already a program that's been established, maybe a cost share program, and you're wanting to let them know about the program and encourage them to sign up for the program, letting them know that they'll have firewood afterwards that stays on their property, but they'll have to manage that firewood because you don't want to see a bunch of wood being moved, infested wood being moved, and further potentially infesting other areas like Stacy just talked about. Or that there's going to be a lot of activity in your community and there's going to be this huge staging ground for all of this downed firewood and grinding operations. So that's going to be happening in the community. Or, you know, there's all this work that's going to be happening near your community to make roadsides more safe. And so there's going to be temporarily reduced, you know, some road closures possibly, or noise, you know, in the neighborhood as things are being, wood is being ground up, or tree removal operations and so forth. So those were just a few examples of kind of thinking really what is the message, and it could be all of them. Truly, it could be all of them. But what is your primary objective in wanting to talk with the community? What kind of conversations are you hoping to have? You know, are you seeking solutions? You know, the communities are your asset if you're looking for solutions. So again, defining the community, geographical area, organizations, industry sectors, demographics. I like to consider, you know, who are the stakeholders? You know, who are the people or businesses or organizations that are going to be impacted by the issue? Again, existing maybe local community organizations that are really well established in the community, or in a more larger area, like I said, a joint stakeholder or a joint agency group that's already established and you know, functioning in the area, and residents already really know the different people that are involved in this joint stakeholder group. You know, if it's an industry focus, are there professional organizations that you can potentially partner with to help deliver the information? Again, organizations, what's the makeup of that? You know, are there different, you know, what's the org chart for that? Are there different levels and different messages that need to be shared? Demographic, you know, age, that picture in the lower left, that's with some youth, a project we did. And certainly if you're trying to connect with youth and children, you know, what types of graphics, the messaging, you know, you want to make sure that they're understanding the message. Any demonstrations or projects that you're going to be doing with them or hoping to do with them, you'll want to make sure that information is easily understood, you know, give them opportunities to share, to be recognized, to be part of this overall solution in their community. But also make sure you have plenty of resources available for their families, the adults, so they truly understand what the issue is and what they may be encouraging their children to participate in. And then, let me see, there's the pictures here. Yeah, this photo of CAL FIRE up in Idlewild, removing some trees along the roadside, and then a lower right is a photo of the early years of the Gold Spotted Oak Borer Steering Committee, which was a joint agency, joint stakeholder group. So then hopefully you found cooperators, you've kind of defined the community. What are the best ways to have these conversations? And it could depend on what that community, how you've defined that community and what their availability is. You know, where are the common areas for community meetings, or if it's more of a commuter meeting or a commuter community, when's the best time to have the meeting? Is it, you know, going to be during a weeknight, or is it going to be during a weekend? And then what type of gathering are you going to have, or how are you going to initiate these conversations or invite people to have conversation with you. So these are just some examples. There's field trainings for industry professionals. There's just general community-wide events or educational opportunities where you can do general outreach. There's actually with your community or local residents, giving them a field tour, showing them what the issues are. A traditional in-person workshop class, indoor classroom type event or webinar such as this, or having a joint, participatory joint agency community kind of a workshop or field training out in the field. Those are just a few ideas. I'm really hoping that you'll be able to share some ideas too when we have our Q&A. And then, I think it's exciting to get to know these different communities. I think everyone has a different personality, just like people do. So it's not just engaging a community, engaging with them, but it's also engaging in community. So this is just an image of an acorn planting activity with youth down in the Descanso area. And all the adults in this photo are volunteering, but they're with a lot of different agencies and organizations. And, just keeping an eye out on what other things and activities might be happening in the community. Like I said, if there's a community celebration or a street fair, I find it fun and interesting to, as able to be able to visit and participate in some of these local activities and, bump into some of the people you may be working with on a more casual and friendly level. So that's about all I had. Just some general tips, hopefully to kind of spur some ideas of ways that you engage community that we can discuss later. Thank you again for inviting me. Here's my contact information. These are some local programs and projects that I've worked on, so feel free to contact me about any of these or others, and hopefully I can help you in some way, shape, or form. And this last picture was an image of, it's actually regarding invasive shot-hole borer, and it was a field training for identification and monitoring strategies. And this was done, it was specifically for our local tribal communities, and it was held down in the Sequan area. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Jan. So if I could have Jan and Charlie and Stacy stay on, and if folks could go ahead and drop their, and there she is. I have some questions that we've been collecting throughout the day, but I'm going to start with Stacy. If you could talk a little bit more about the current methods that they're using to treat GSOB, and if Charlie or Jan, you have anything to add what Stacy says, but are there any breakthroughs in dealing with the gold-spotted oak borer?
Yeah, so we have a pretty good system for protecting trees from gold-spotted oak borer, but that's using contact insecticides or systemic insecticides that would be either need to be applied every year or every 2 years in the case of the systemic insecticides. And we have found that that if we do spray at the right time, then we can protect the trees from further infestation. So if the tree is already heavily infested or weakened by other things, then it's unlikely to really respond to that treatment. But I kind of mentioned very briefly in my presentation, but there is a biological insecticide that we're looking into right now. That's a derivative of a plant that would not have the same toxicity and buildup in the environment. So it would be, and it would be a systemic application. So potentially be able to treat trees and then also consume the acorns potentially. So with the other systemic insecticides, we wouldn't recommend consuming acorns of trees that have been treated systemically. The acorns that are produced from trees that are treated with the carbaryl, or the contact insecticides, those would be fine to eat that season, but not with the systemics. So I guess it's not a breakthrough yet. It's still under consideration, still being researched. And then we do also know that the most effective way to deal with infested wood is to grind it to within a chip, 1-inch chip size.
And then once you
And if-
grind it to the 1-inch chip size, do you just compost it, or do you have to haul it to the dump, or it depends on where you're at?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you want to do with it. If you wanted to use the firewood, you could even debark and then grind the bark up, because the beetles are only in the bark, and then you could use the wood. Or you could season the wood either by, you could leave it uncovered, but then the beetles would be able to infest nearby trees. So the best thing to do is to season by containing the wood. And so we've tried a few different methods. We found that the most effective method is using a really fine metal mesh screening, kind of like the one you would use for screen doors to keep mosquitoes out. So kind of making a cage out of that and then putting the firewood in there, but you would have to leave it in there for 2 years, because that's the potential complete life cycle of those beetles.
And we had a question about, does this systemic insecticide impact the acorns, and if so, for how many years?
Yes, the systemic insecticides would impact the acorns, and it would potentially, we know that the treatment is effective for 2 years, but I don't think any studies have been done to see how long it remains in the acorns after that. Because I know that with some compounds, the trees can sequester the compounds inside of their tissues, like inside of their roots, and then re-release. So it would definitely impact the acorns, and I just don't know for how long.
And if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, we do welcome that if you want to go ahead and raise your hand. And sometimes I can't always see if someone has raised their hand, so you'll just have to.
So with another part to that question, which is, or a comment saying that we need to know where trees are being treated. So on the part of the Forest Service, we don't treat any trees with the systemic insecticide. So we are currently treating mostly coast live oak in several of the campgrounds and like fire station areas, one in Oak Grove, and then also some on the Trabuco Ranger District. But the acorn should be fine to eat after that application. But you know, these aren't systemic insecticides; these are contact insecticides.
Okay.
Charlie, did you have something to add? I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, I had a question about GSOB in its natural or original area isn't quite such a problem. Are there thoughts of why that might be, of things with the trees, or that they do have other competition or pathogens? Because there are fungi that do eat insects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they did a survey of the native area of gold spotted oak borer, and there were a couple of parasitoid wasps that one of them I think is not in California. The other one, another one is, and there's also a generalist, a couple of generalist predators, meaning that they don't just attack gold spotted oak borer, they attack a lot of different insects, or more than just gold spotted oak borer. So that could be a piece of it. The pathogens also could be a piece of it, but they weren't able to, they didn't observe any pathogens that they saw frequently. But you know, unless you're sampling for it specifically, I think you wouldn't find it. The theory is that, one, these are naive hosts, meaning that they haven't co-evolved with the gold spotted oak borer, so they haven't developed defenses, chemical defenses, physical, you know, like actual physical defenses, meaning like structural defenses. And then the other thing that the researchers have theorized is that bark thickness is actually one of the limiting factors. So in these species that they've in the native range, the bark is thinner. And we've seen here that they do prefer these thick bark species like California black oak and coast live oak. So when we funded this research on these hybrid oaks, that's one of the characteristics they're looking at to see if there is a correlation between bark thickness and infestation as well. So just thicker bark, more real estate, I guess, able to sustain more beetles.
I have another question. I think it's probably directed more towards Jan, but Charlie and Stacy might have something to add. So we know that moving around firewood is a problem, but you said, Stacy, I think with the gold-spotted oak borer, if you remove the bark, you can still sell the firewood. But is that true with the invasive shot-hole borer? And then what can you really do about people moving firewood around? Because there's a lot of people that sell firewood. I mean, I see trucks all the time, especially in the colder months, delivering firewood to different parts of the county, and I don't know if it's been inspected or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of one of the problems we're not really going to be able to solve. It's something that we can affect maybe with education and outreach, and we can affect our own decisions. And I know, for instance, there have been local bans on firewood movement. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of not moving it yourself, and then also kind of being a little bit more conscious about where you get your firewood from and what kind of firewood you're bringing in. There's always the potential for pine firewood to be infested with something else, is the new invader, but as of right now, because of the threat of gold-spotted oak borer, I would say if it's oak firewood, not to move it within the San Diego area or outside of the San Diego area. For the invasive shot-hole borers, you wouldn't be able to debark the wood because the beetles go into the wood. So it would be bark and wood that the beetles could potentially be in. In that case, we don't recommend seasoning firewood. We recommend completely grinding up the wood. And so I did get it wrong, Kelly. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, no, the BMPs haven't changed. So for gold-spotted oak borer, it's 3" minus chip size. And then for invasive shot-hole borer, it's 1" minus chip size. So smaller than 1 inch chip size for the invasive shot-hole borer. But then after that, they do recommend that you compost or basically let those chips degrade further. So, yeah, I don't think if you have a tree that's suspected to be infested with invasive shot-hole borer, I don't think that you can season that firewood and then be able to use it.
Jan, have you had any luck working with more remote communities and the problems of moving firewood around, or any strategies to share?
Well, there's some, I know like the Forest Service, they would have an area where if you wanted oak firewood, you would have to get a permit to enter that area, and they would not open up an area unless they knew after a time of seasoning, an adequate amount of time of seasoning that wood. But like Stacy said, it's just being aware where are you getting your firewood from? Are they understanding about the threats and the potential of moving invasive pests through firewood? Talking with your friends and neighbors about that, not moving it yourself, encouraging them not to move it, and for I guess educators and organizations, it's having alternatives available. So if you're telling people you shouldn't buy your firewood over there because it's infested, all the time, and you're risking a lot, what's the alternative for them? Or an alternative source.
There are possible alternative treatments. So there are plenty of examples of fungi that have been moved around on wood. We have the chestnut blight. The eastern chestnut those trees were almost as big as sequoias, and they were all up and down the eastern seaboard. They're gone. We have Dutch elm disease that was moved in wood. Probably the sudden oak death came over the same way. And those are microscopic spores. Something, if you can stop something like that, a spore moving, you're going to stop the insect from moving as well. Some ways of radiating, perhaps. I think with some of the shothoppers, they put things under tarps for 2 years. That would likely sterilize and kill any fungi.
Yeah, I think maybe the changing the culture around how firewood is treated, just as a default for all wood. Yeah, like you said, Charlie, it's not under tarps for 2 years, but you can heat treat firewood, and then it would remove the probability that it would be carrying these fungi and also insects. It's just, I think that a lot of the larger companies don't really have the incentive right now to do that treatment. There's no there's certifications, but not enforced certifications. They can opt into these certifications. And so I think that has to be kind of a culture change in order for that to happen. And then local sellers, even if they are aware, they might not have the capacity to do those kinds of treatments.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a large number of people that sell wood on Craigslist, and there's just the mom and pop shops throughout the county, especially on the outskirts that are, and I don't know that it's true. I see them, a lot, when I'm driving out East County to do a survey or something, you see a lot of these different people selling firewood, and you always see the signs on the roadside, firewood for sale, firewood for sale. But it's important to think about, where is that firewood coming from? I want to just pause for a moment and see if there's anyone in the general audience that wants to give them a chance to speak up and unmute themselves and ask a question before I go on to my next one.
I'm wondering how these funguses and beetles interact with fire.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kimberly. So these specific beetles, it's kind of unknown, but we are looking at the impact of fire on gold-spotted oak borer. And I don't know if Jolene is on. She's also interested in how—
she's going to be speaking later.
Later today, she's not on yet.
I don't know if she's on right now, but she will be presenting, and then there'll be a Q&A later on with her as well.
Okay. Well, she doesn't seem to be on, but Jolene Tam is interested in looking at the interactions between gold-spotted oak borer and prescribed fire. So these are things that we're interested in knowing, Kimberly, but we don't really know how they interact just yet. You want to speak on the fungal side, Charlie?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because there are so many different types of fungi. So like the insects, if the fire isn't too hot, it does weaken the tree, and fungi and insects then attack and continue the decay. We see a lot of that in some of the areas where there's been fire. But there are fungi that actually do come in after fire. There's a Rhizina fungus. It's called the pine fire fungus that comes in after fires, and it does kill a lot of seedlings. There are fungi that are specific to burned charcoal, and they feed on that carbon, and they start recycling, and the mycorrhizae that come in after fire. So there's a lot of beneficial things as well as some of the pathogens. So it's hard to put things in a real nice, neat box.
Yeah, so there's a, on the insect side and the fungal side, there's a suite of species that are co-evolved to react to fire. So there are beetles that come in after the trees have already been burned or weakened, and then they'll help decay those weakened trees. But I also want to kind of speak on the other side, which is that any practices that increase the health overall of the stand of trees or the health of the forest could potentially help those trees withstand pathogens and insects. So, don't think that fire, just because it can weaken trees, could have just a net overall loss. It could be a net benefit.
Well, I know traditionally when we used to burn underneath our oaks that we gathered from, which killed the parasites in the leaves, but also the smoking itself was beneficial to the tree. And I can't help but think that that might be beneficial in a case like this, which is, to me, more acceptable than pesticides for the benefit of not only human consumption or use, but also the natural world and the balance there.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and that's the direction we really have to be going in, because, you'd have to treat these trees kind of in perpetuity, like until the beetles are no longer in the area, which is not going to happen. They're firmly established now. So to have, of course you can protect individual trees for as long as you want, but the forest overall, we're moving towards practices like you're talking about, Kimberly, more sustainable practices that would affect a landscape rather than individual trees. That was a really good question. Thank you.
How is it that you are able to, survey for these pests, whether it be the gold-spotted oak borer, the invasive shot-hole borer, or the new bug that is coming in? I know that you rely heavily on biologists that are already out in the field, but having the background that you do, the exit holes, I've seen them before, but how do you stay on top of this?
Yeah, it's really hard. We really have to rely on individual landowners to do their own surveys. The best way of monitoring is for gold-spotted oak borer is ground surveys. So actually looking at individual trees. A lot of the surveys that we do are based in areas where we're going to do active management. So on the forest overall, we're not doing that much individual tree surveys. We're kind of playing catch up. So we're looking at from aerial detection planes, basically like small aircraft flying over forested land. We're looking at newly dead trees. So we're not looking at infestation level, we're looking at mortality. And then for invasive shot-hole borer and for this Mediterranean oak borer, we also have traps that are effective. So there are a network of traps that we have given out and we have put out in national forest land that help us detect areas that are not known to be infested and detect like newly introduced or expanded range of these insects. I don't think we have any traps for Mediterranean oak borer down here yet, but that could be something we do in the future.
There was one question that came in on the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but somebody asked if eucalyptus firewood was a vector issue.
No, it shouldn't be a vector issue. There is a eucalyptus longhorn borer that's killing eucalyptus, but are you specifically talking as like maybe like for invasive shot-hole borer or threats to oaks, it wouldn't be an issue?
So, I mean, so, you know, eucalyptus is generally a good species of firewood to use. Basically, so if you were.
Then, yeah, I would say that.
It doesn't harbor the gold-spotted oak borer or the invasive shot-hole borer.
Unlikely to harbor invasive shot-hole borer, yeah. And then definitely not gold-spotted oak borer.
It does have a disease though. So there's a eucalyptus rust that is bad and a problem in South America and in Australia. And it has been detected here in San Diego a number of years ago. So the more eucalyptus that is grown, the more people burn it, the more it will move. So it may become a problem in the future, because that is something that maybe Kimberly was referring to. When you do burn, it also spreads the disease. So like spores, when the ground is warm and you start burning, that the layers then move up into the atmosphere and it moves the spores by burning. And it may also do that with insects. And once you start burning, the insects move and then the disease or the insect then spreads.
Yeah, that doesn't really happen with insects that are inside of the wood. Thankfully, if you burn it, they're just kind of going to die in there. But you have to burn it right away. I think that's the thing with the firewood movement. We're not talking about, thankfully, they don't just like emerge quickly from the bark when they're being burned, when the wood's being burned. They're more likely to die. But the issue with the firewood is that people have firewood piles and like let the wood sit, or don't burn all of the wood that they brought. And that's how the insects get out. But so the long and short of it is that moving a eucalyptus firewood may be a risk to eucalyptus that you have in your area if you let the firewood sit there, or I guess even if you burn it, apparently. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, you know, that's hot air rises and the smoke rises and the spores are with it. And as that moves, the spores are in the smoke and they're moving around.
That's crazy.
I'm just going to pause for a moment and see if there's any questions from the audience. You can go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I want to congratulate all of the speakers. That was phenomenal. I learned a lot and it's very exciting all of the work are doing. I have one question for Stacy, and I don't remember, but you mentioned, I believe, that in willows, you have seen some of the, in the Tijuana River, some of the attacked. And you say that the results were promising because the actual clonal of these trees have confirmed some type of resistance to the beetles. Is that what you say?
No, we don't really know why, but I don't think that it's resistance. I would say it's probably the population levels kind of died down after all the main hosts died away, or, you know, they kind of died off or moved out of the area. And so there's lower population levels there. And then also, even though they can infest really small material, they do kind of prefer larger material. So okay. The other thing is that, yeah, the sprouts might have a completely different chemistry than the mature stems. So it could be resistance. We just don't know.
I was thinking more about those lines because I was thinking maybe the acquired response, the systemic response of the trees that might be activated. So I was kind of wondering if there was into those things, because that might be very promising.
Yeah. Right, but it would be potentially temporary. And then once the stems get to a certain size, kind of like, I don't know, like, what is that canker of chestnut canker? You know, there is still American chestnut on the landscape, just, you know, really small stems. And then once they reach a certain size, then they get killed by chestnut chestnut blight. Is it chestnut blight, right, Charlie? So that could be what would happen here. We just don't know yet.
Thank you.
I do have a question though. Is that something, I mean, that would be great if we could research that. I don't know, just putting that out there.
Do you want to say specifically what you're talking about, just for?
Looking into the mechanisms or potential mechanisms that would cause the beetles to not be as successful in the sprouts of the willows.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
It could be preference. Yeah, it could be preference, or it could be actually some kind of like physiological or chemical response.
Yeah, let's talk about it, Stacey, if you want to later. Yeah, and
Okay.
with more people. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I'm up in El Dorado County, so Northern California. Are we going to discuss any of the issues up in that end, or is it pretty much focused on Southern California?
Carolyn?
So we have 3 other sessions. I'm not sure which specific issues you're talking about, but we have a session this afternoon, tribal knowledge. We have one tomorrow morning with climate change, and we have one in the afternoon on oak restoration. If you want to, we have plenty of time. If you have a particular thing I'm not sure which issues you're referring to.
Well, we just discussed a lot of the funguses and beetles, most of them primarily affecting Southern California. We're losing a lot of our blue oaks up here. And obviously, we're under siege with fire right now. And what's the best way to recover in those aspects? And I'm always looking for better ways to take care. I'm a land steward of many, many, many acres, and work with a lot of different land preservation. And they're always seeking knowledge. And so I share what I know, but I'm always trying to learn more. So that's why I'm here.
I think as we move through the sessions, some of those questions will come out. But if Charlie or Stacy or Jan have anything to say about that.
There are pathologists and entomologists in your area.
Yeah, so we have, so Charlie and I are stationed in Southern California, and we advise Southern California. And that's why we kind of focus on this area, but we have our counterparts do serve the El Dorado County area. So, so if you want to go on, I'll link our website or contact information in the chat box, and then you can contact the person that would be best. And then I will also say that the Mediterranean oak borer, I think one of the slides was not updated. So it was recently found in Yolo County, I believe, or is Sacramento County? It was found in Sacramento. So that would be another stressor that would affect your blue oaks, because they have been found infesting blue oak, but they seem to, seems like they prefer valley oak, but potentially could affect the blue oak. And then as far as I know, a lot of the weakened blue oaks are because of drought related conditions. So I guess that's something else that can be discussed during this this series. Maybe during the climate change portion, a question that you can pose.
Thank you. You guys are great.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'm just going to be quiet for about a minute and see if there's anyone else in the audience that wants to say something.
Hi, Jan. This is Bryant. I wanted to know if there was an app that everybody uses to connect to local programs in their area, a phone app.
Local programs in general, or specifically to gold spotted oak borer or invasive forest pest? I don't know of an app. Either way, I guess I should just say I don't know. I do know there are some apps that people use if they're doing like citizen science type monitoring for different pests. Those are more organized. But as far as a general app for connecting different programs, someone else might not know. I may be of the wrong age demographic to really know all about all the apps that are out there.
You're the right demographic, Jan. Yeah, you can. So maybe not. Did you ask Brian about like resources? Because I don't think there's an app for that, but I think that your best source would be those websites that I mentioned, because there are groups that organize around each of these pests and like that are specific to geographic location. And then we also have an emerging tree pest group that anybody is welcome to join in on. And those occur every couple of weeks. And a lot of different agencies come together and report about the activities that are happening for each of these invasive insects. They're insect related. Sorry, Charlie. So if you're interested in that too, just send me an email. I'm going to put my email in the chat and then we can add you to the list. Otherwise, there's reporting on each of those websites, gsob.org, MOBPC, ISH or pshb.org. And Jan was right. There are citizen science programs that are going on right now for invasive shot-hole borer. And those are also geographically specific, but you can always use iNaturalist to report as well. It's just that I don't think anybody's really looking actively at like all the iNaturalist reports, just specifically the ones related to citizen science projects. So I think the best thing would be the reporting on those individual like UCANR websites.
Okay, got it. I just thought there was some sort of forum or a board that everyone connects on, whether it be through an app or through distributing like a schedule to whoever was registered on a list. But then I guess I will just contact you to be on that list.
Yeah.
So each, I shouldn't say each, but I know gold spotted oak borer and invasive shot-hole borer. What I need to double check the invasive shot-hole borer, but I know for sure the gold spotted oak borer has a like an email subscription list, and that's just on the front page, the homepage of the gsob.org, the website, and you can just hit to subscribe and enter your email. And yes, whenever there's activities going on or educational outreach workshop opportunities, we let you know. Or new resource, if a new resource comes out or a new version, an updated publication, we let you know.
Okay.
So there's that.
Thanks.
I would have to go back. I just don't remember offhand. We used to have something similar on the ishb.org or pshb.org website. I haven't looked at that one lately, so I think it should be still there. If you're interested, you can email me as well, and I can get you on those lists.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Jan. Yeah, the emerging tree pest group covers all of the pests that I talked about, and at least in Southern California, and that also would be a mailing list in combination with conference calls. So, and then I linked our forest health protection website, and then another thing that's cool that you can access from the website is the tree mortality year by year. You can look at maps, and you can look at you can get the shape files too if you are familiar with those. So you can look at year by year new mortality.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all that information. This is a lot more than I asked for.
Yeah.
We'll just give folks another 30 seconds, see if anybody else wants to speak up. I know sometimes it takes people a minute to unmute themselves. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn things back over to Kurt, who's going to give us some words of encouragement for lunch and whatnot. Go ahead, Kurt. Kurt, are you there?
Don't hear anything.
Oh no, was I
There
muted?
he is.
All right. Sorry, I got the second mute button. Words of encouragement are don't move firewood and keep working hard. No, our three speakers, Jan, Stacy, Charlie, I've heard speak probably a dozen times. There's always new information, tons of fascinating facts out there and positive, positive spins to all the terrible diseases that are going to kill all of our trees. But, we're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you. This morning session has been great. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to all the comments. We've got a little survey I dropped into the chat. If you could take at the end of each session, we'll pop it in there and you can fill it out and we'll know for the future what we can do to improve these sessions and help everybody out more. And any of our speakers who want to provide their contact are welcome to do it. I'll keep the chat open. I'll keep the Zoom open, but you can log off, come back after lunch. It's the same Zoom link. Everybody should have it. Same one for all the sessions. And our afternoon session will be our tribal knowledge session, which should be another fantastic session and maybe a little more uplifting at the end than our here's what the new pests are session, but it's all important and it's all how we manage our oaks. Thank you guys. Have a good lunch.
What time, Kurt?
Oh, I guess I should mention that. Yeah, it'll start at 1. So I'll be on a little bit before 1, but the actual session is 1 to 3.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
For those who have stayed on, for environmental staff, if you guys wanted to apply for forest health protection suppression funding for this next year, contact me immediately because especially in light of us not getting the California Climate Investment Grant funding for the San Diego area, I know that there's some other funding coming available through other state funding, like the Fire and Forest Resilience grants. But just contact me and then we'll get working on applications for this next year.